Good afternoon. This is the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners for December 3rd, 2018. I'm Commissioner Bud Blake, Chair of the Board this year. I'd like to start off by doing a few introductions. To my right is Commissioner John Hutchings. To his right is Labadina Beaumark, Clerk of the Board. To her right is the County Manager, Romero Chavez. And to his right is the Budget Officer of Assistant County Manager, Robin Campbell. Today we're here in public hearing on a couple on the budget, and we'll cover a couple items as I go through here. So I'd like to start off by saying that the public hearing is here to hear public testimony on the preliminary Thurston County 2019-2020 biennial operational or operating and capital budgets. The purpose of the public hearing is schedule for today on December 3rd, 2018, and tomorrow for December 4th, 2018, is to hear public testimony on the county's preliminary 2019-2020 biennial operating and capital budgets. The preliminary budget was published online on November 19th, 2018, and has been available to the public pursuant to public notice since that date, online and in print. This public hearing is in accordance with RCW 36.40.071. So if you've never been to a public hearing, we have sign-in sheets that are in the back, and eventually I'll bring the sheets forward and then ask those who want to come to the podium to be able to testify on an individual basis. You get 3 minutes to your name. You cannot delegate your time, and then we ask those in the audience also to silence their cell phones in respect for those who are at the podium when it comes time to speak. So with that in mind, it's typical I have a staff person to give a little bit of background on the budgets as a whole. But today we're going to go through the law and justice and eventually get to the general government, the capital facilities plan, and then hear budget hearing on certain sections portion to the budget. So I'm going to ask Robin Campbell to give us a little bit of background, and then I'll start the rest of the public testimony.
Thank you, Commissioner. So this afternoon, you are hearing a portion of the overall county budget. The hearings will continue to tomorrow, and this evening, both evenings, there'll be open sessions. So this is a copy of the Thurston County budget. It is 356 pages. It has tens of thousands of lines of code. Just the change requests in this budget is thousands of lines. Staff across the county had 5 weeks to prepare for each office and department their budget requests, and budget staff had 3 weeks for review of all of these lines of code before we began to meet with the board and make the changes that you requested, which was, again, hundreds and hundreds of lines of code. So this has been a very intense process. It's labor intensive, and I have a deep appreciation for everyone who has worked on this budget. And I would also like to extend my thanks and appreciation to those elected officials and department directors who have come here today prepared to answer any questions from the public. So we're ready to go. The budget is, here's another copy of the schedule. At 1:30 today, we'll hear law and justice agencies. At 4 o'clock, general government. At 6 o'clock this evening, capital facilities plan, and at 6:15, an open hearing on the budget. The way this works is we'll hear this sector, we'll move as quickly as possible. After each office or department, we'll invite the public to come up and give comments or questions, and then just immediately move to the next office or department. So we should move very quickly today, and then this evening will be open, and we'll just take Q&A, and we'll record questions and get back to them if we should have any. So I will just present a very high-level overview, and then you'll be able to invite. And I will quickly move through a high-level overview. The 2019-2020 biennium operating budget. In all funds, we anticipate a revenue of about $294 million in 2019 and expenditures of a little over $305 million. In 2020, revenue of a little over $298 million and expenditures of $302 million. And as you can see, we'll be spending down fund balance in many of our funds. Property tax is the single largest revenue source in the county budget. Out of every dollar, the general fund receives only 9.5 cents. There's a little bit of pennies that go to other funds in the county, roads, Veterans Fund, Public Health Fund, Conservation Futures, and Medic One. But overall, the vast majority of property tax dollars goes to the state and to other local jurisdictions. Overall operating expenses across all funds, you'll see that the funds, the penny on this slide is split up roughly equally, 27% to law and justice, 27% to economic vitality, that includes roads and land use, 17% to health and human services, 13% internal services, 10% to legislative, which includes quite a few funds that are managed by the board, and then 6% to general government. So this is a breakdown of the overall county budget. And in our capital budget, that was just the operating budget. The capital budget, we anticipate revenue of $28 million in 2019 and $263 million in 2020. Now, the reason that that goes up substantially is we have assumed that we will issue bonds to be able to build a new county courthouse. And the $263 million is mainly the bond revenue that we will use for construction of that project. So that's why that's so much money. Capital expenditures, $31.7 million in 2019, $28.9 million in 2020. This includes the expansion of our jail, and in 2020 the legislative expenditures include the beginning of work on the courthouse project. That is of course subject to a vote, and we anticipate that that question will be on the ballot next year. But the bulk of our capital projects are in public works, so you see them under economic vitality. General fund revenue, again, we had an extensive hearing on the revenue last week. The operating revenue for the general fund is anticipated to be a little over $97 million, and you see right under that the operating expenditures of $99 million. Revenue in 2020, a little over $100 million. And a little more than that of expenditures. Here's the breakdown of types of service from the general fund. Now, unlike total funds that are more evenly distributed, the general fund is used mainly for law and justice type services in the county. So 74% for law and justice, then 12% for general government, 7% legislative, 3% economic vitality, 2% internal services, and 2% for health and human services. And the reason for that is most of these other items have restricted funds that we can use for the services that we provide. So that's why this is so heavily law and justice. There are very few other restricted funds that we can use for this purpose. I wanted to show you that over time, even though there is what appears to be a significant gap between revenues and expenditures, two things you should be aware of. First is that budgeted expenditures are always higher than actual expenditures. And as you see on this chart, the actual amount that the county spends from the general fund is anywhere from 3 to 5% less per year than the appropriation amount. So we are fairly confident that at the end of any given year, we're going to revert about 3%. So expenditures will always be less than you budget. And compared to revenue, general fund compared to revenue, revenue is the line, expenditures are the bars. You will see that there are, in most years, the revenue and the expenditure are fairly close. Now, we have had some years, like when the Great Recession hit in 2009, the expenditures far exceeded the revenue, and we started to spend down our general fund balance. Over the course of 3 years, we took steps to bring the expenditures back into line with the revenue. By 2014, we had begun to spend less than the revenue. If you looked in years before 2007, you will see that that is normally the trend. So during the Great Recession years, we struggled with that, got it back in line, and then beginning in 2017, and we anticipate again in 2018 that our spending will be higher than the revenue that we bring in. And the budget for the next 2 years, it's anticipated that the expenditures and the revenue will be extremely close. So it's one of the things that we're going to be watching as we go. So here again is how the afternoon hearings will work. I will do a very high-level introduction of the officer department. We'll invite anyone from the public to speak. And then elected officials, again, are here to answer any questions that they may have. And then we'll just move right on to the next. So we're going to start with Superior and Juvenile Courts. Superior Court consists of 8 elected judges. Their court administrator is Pam Hartman-Beyer, who's here with us this afternoon, along with Judge Schaller. Thank you very much for coming. Superior Court hears both civil and criminal cases and conducts DUI and drug court. This is, again, a very high-level description of the office. They do so much more. Yes?
I have a question regarding page number 3, that's the bottom slide, that the one that has the assumption of the courthouse bond revenue. I forgot what the amount was, but if you back that out, is it pretty close to 28 million, 29 million then without that bond revenue?
We're looking at the...
1920 capital proposed revenue, all funds.
Okay, so on page 6, slide number 6.
Number 6.
Slide 6.
Is that it, 6?
That's on page 3.
It's page number 3, but it
page
might be
3,
slide
but slide 6, yes.
3, 4, 5, 6, yes.
So
it
this
is.
one right here.
Okay.
So if you back out the bond revenue, yes, we are very close to about 27, 28 million.
Okay.
We can get you with exactly what the number is.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
That's it.
great. So back to Superior Court. In Superior Court, the changes in next biennium's budget is we have added a criminal calendar coordinator for the court and add a child therapist to Family Recovery Court. The court's budget is approximately $5.5 million out of the general fund, and they do have a small amount of restricted funds, so their total budget is $6.2 million in 2019 and $6.3 million in 2020. And at this time, I will ask the chair to invite the public if they would like to comment.
There's been no public, so does the Superior Court have anything to say, or no? Sure.
I don't have any comments today unless the commissioners have any questions. We're very thankful that we
if the budget is approved, we'll have the new criminal calendar coordinator as well as the addition of the child therapist to our family recovery court.
You bet. It's great to have it in there.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay, then you're going to move right along to juvenile court, and that's how this afternoon's going to go. So juvenile court is part of Superior Court, but they have a separate appropriation. Administrator Mike Fenton is with us this afternoon. The juvenile court provides court, probation, and detention services for youth up to 18 years of age. This budget increases funding for extra help and increases funding for therapeutic horsemanship program that was begun this fiscal year for youth with mental health and chemical dependency needs. The general fund is right around $7 million each year. Juvenile court has a few restricted funds, but the main difference between these are treatment sales tax dollars. Total budget for juvenile court is $7.9 million in 2019 and in 2020.
Great. Is there any public? No public signed in for the juvenile court? Does the juvenile court wish to make a public statement? No? Good. Okay, sure. We just move along to the office of the clerk.
All right. There was juvenile. Here is the office of the clerk. We have clerk Linda Meyer-Enlow.
I don't see her.
I don't see her with us this afternoon, or Tawny either. But the clerk, the office of the clerk, their function is to record Superior Court proceedings. They maintain the court's records. They collect fines and fees that are ordered by the court. These are their main duties. In the budget for next year, what the board has chosen to do is we had to transfer positions that are currently paid from restricted funds out of those restricted funds because there's insufficient revenue or fund balance to continue to pay for those positions there. You've transferred those to the general fund for 6 months as the court and the clerk work together with the board to petition the legislature to restore our court impact fees, which are worth, the county incurs, just for information purposes, approximately $1.1 million every year from cases that can only be filed in Thurston County, and we're asking the state to pay for that cost. So that is, those are the main changes in the Office of the Clerk's budget. The general fund budget is $3.7 million per year, total budget of 4.2, and the difference is the small restricted funds, which include special victim and legal financial obligation funds.
Commissioner Hutchins has a question or comment.
Should we not, and I don't know if you know the answer to this or not, Robin, but should we not receive the funding, full funding or even partial funding back from the legislature, and the fund to fund that employee position runs dry in 6 months' time? What's the clerk's plan for the employee for that position?
So the plan at this time is for the clerk to work closely with me and your staff and with you to figure out how to take this reduction, because it's more than one person that could be impacted, and we want to give the clerk the maximum possible flexibility to be able to manage her budget as she sees fit. So she may come and give you a plan at that time that includes laying off certain staff, or she may find another way to absorb those costs, or we may discuss another form of funding. So there's some options there, but you know, the real hope is that the state will step up and pay the cost that is incurred on their behalf.
But hope it's not a method or a strategy, something like that?
It's not a
Nope,
method.
but we've got these other backup,
I got it.
you know,
But-
we're
but
working
our
on the backup
Your
plan.
office is working closely with the clerk's office, even though that office is autonomous.
Yes.
We're working with them in budgeting
Yes.
strategies. Thank you.
Yes, we are.
All right. So is there anybody from the public to address the office of the clerk? Seeing no one, and is there anybody from the clerk's office here to make a comment? No? Okay, we'll move on to the next one, is the coroner.
All right. So the Office of the Coroner, we have Coroner Gary Warnock here with us today. Thank you. The Coroner's Office reviews and investigates deaths that occur in Thurston County. It's their main duty. This budget increases a deputy coroner position from half an FTE to a full FTE because the number of cases that they're investigating is increasing. The total budget for the coroner's office, general fund is $1.2 million, bless you, $1.2 million a year, and there are no other restricted funds that we can use to pay for this particular service that's provided. So it's 100% general fund money.
Comments or questions? No? Does anybody from the public wish to address the budget for the coroner? Seeing no one, did you want to make a comment, or are you good with where you're at?
I'm good, thank you very much.
You bet. All right. We're good with the coroner, so we'll move on to district court.
Moving on to district court. What if we, oh no. Okay, so thank you for spotting that. In district court, we have 3 elected judges, and the court administrator is not Teresa Ewing. Apologize for that. So Jennifer is with us. Jennifer Crichton is here with us this afternoon. Thank you for being here. So the main duties of district court is to hear misdemeanor, traffic, small and civil claim cases, and they run the mental health and the veterans therapeutic court. The changes in the budget for next year, or the next biennium, add intensive case supervision, a probation counselor for that, and increases the court commissioner from 0.75 FTE to a full-time FTE to handle the caseload. General fund is approximately $3.4 million per year. Total budget is right at $4 million per year. The main difference is treatment sales tax funding, and that's the budget for district court.
Okay, comments, questions, district court? And so is there anybody from the public who would like to have a comment on the district court's budget? Seeing no one, is from someone from the district court would like to come to the podium and say something?
No, thank you this time.
Okay, Jennifer.
Okay.
Next is pretrial services.
Yes, moving right along. Pretrial Services Director Mary Ann Clear, who is here with us this afternoon. Pretrial Services conducts pretrial investigations and screening and makes recommendations to the court, working closely with the prosecutor and the public defense office for pretrial release. They supervise released defendants, again, pre-trial, and connect defendants to community resources. This budget adds an officer for defendants, particularly those with substance abuse and mental health needs, and their budget is just a little over $600,000. It's a very small budget. I think this is the smallest budget in the county. The total budget is a little over $700,000. The main difference is treatment sales tax dollars.
Comments, questions?
Nope.
All righty, anybody from the public that wish to address the pretrial services? Seeing no one, and from pretrial services, do you wish to come to the podium and say anything? Oh, good. All righty, we'll move on to prosecuting attorney's office.
Okay, prosecuting attorney, Prosecutor John Thunheim is here with us this afternoon. Thank you, sir. The Again, these are the main high-level duties of this office, are criminal prosecution services for the state, and civil legal advice to county offices, and then our prosecutor also has a crime victim services program. The budget next biennium continues the public records team, which is a civil service to other county offices and departments, and partially funds the rent for the Family Justice Center building lease. The general fund budget is 9.2 in 2019 and 9.5 in 2020. The total budget is $10.4 million in 2019 and closer to 10.7 in 2020. There are a few small, very small restricted funds that the prosecutor manages, and then the main difference again is street and sales tax funding.
Okay, great. Anybody from the public wish to address the prosecuting attorney budget? Seeing no one, sir, would you like to come to the podium and speak?
Yes, Commissioners, thank you. I just wanted to take a minute and talk at a very high level about the two elements that you heard that this budget adds. The first is, I'll take it in reverse order, I think, of what was actually presented. One is additional money for space for us to be a participant at the Family Justice Center. A number of years ago when we were starting the Family Justice Center, the space that was within the Family Support Center downtown only allowed us to move a portion of our total domestic violence program into that center. It's always been our goal to try to have our entire domestic violence program co-located in the Family Justice Center so that every victim that's working with our office has an opportunity for those services and for that collaboration to benefit them. As you know, the Family Support Service recently took possession of a new facility on the west side of Olympia that gives us the ability to expand our footprint, add additional space to our program, and to finally reach this goal of bringing our entire domestic violence program into that facility. So for us, this represents not just a little check mark in the budget, but actually a huge check mark in terms of the goal that we set ourselves many years ago with this undertaking, and I appreciate very much your support in making that happen. The second piece is the funding for our public records unit. As you know, this past year and a half or so, we've been piloting a program, a demonstration program, if you will, to see how this would look. I've always considered public records to be a significant source of risk for the county, but also a very, very important public service. And it's actually an increasingly more important public service as more people become aware of this and want to have public records when they're looking at county government. And certainly furthers our overall goal of transparency. We feel like that unit's been hugely successful, and apparently you did as well by supporting its continuation into this next budget. And I also just want to comment that we recently just received a grant from the Secretary of State's office that will allow us to purchase software, which will help us track all of our public records requests and make sure that we are being absolutely on track and on time with producing public records, which I think is exactly what the public expects. I don't think we would have been able to compete for that grant had we not had this unit. So I just want to thank you again for supporting those budget requests, and I'm hopeful going into the future. Hope is a strategy, Commissioner, and we can debate that sometime. Thank you.
But it's not a method.
Not method.
Any comments?
No.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Move on to the sheriff. Yeah. Thank you, sir, for those comments.
I think before the sheriff, we'll hear about public defense. So public defense, we have Director Patrick O'Connor here with us this afternoon. Our Office of Public Defense provides legal defense services to indigent individuals, and I believe these are all criminal. And the budget for next biennium shifts part of the costs of defense services, we currently contract for attorneys for these services. We're going to bring those cases in-house, so the cost is shifted to in-house FTEs instead of contractors. We believe that those will continue to create efficiencies in the office. The general fund budget is $6.5 million roughly. The total budget, $6.7 million in 2019 and $6.8 million in 2020, and the main difference is treatment sales tax funding.
So anybody from the public with wish to come to the podium to address the public defense budget? Seeing no one. Sir, did you have any comments you'd like to make today?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Patrick O'Connor on behalf of Public Defense. If this request is approved, I'd like to personally express my gratitude to the Commission for this support. I think it's best practice. This puts our department in the best opportunity to serve our public, and if approved, I appreciate your support on behalf of the department on the county.
You bet. Any
Thank you.
comments?
No, thank you, Patrick.
Thank you for your good service and your team.
Thank you,
You
Commissioner.
bet. All right, next person we have is the Sheriff's Office.
Yes, now
Yeah.
moving on to the sheriff. We have Sheriff Snaza with us here this afternoon. Thank you, sir, for being with us. Again, a very high level, the sheriff provides emergency response and law enforcement to the unincorporated county. And the sheriff's office does much more than this, but this is the high level main core business function. This budget adds 2 sheriff deputies and transfers the interlocal narcotics task force from the city of Olympia, or rather the city of Lacey, to Thurston County, where the sheriff's office will administer the task force. The general fund budget for law enforcement is $18.9 million in 2019 and $19 million in 2020. The total budget is just a little more than that, $19.3 million and then $19.5 million, because there are very small restricted funds that the sheriff has, including the new task force fund.
Okay, sure. Anybody from the public wish to address the Sheriff's Office budget? Seeing no one. Sir, would you care to make a comment, or are you good?
Could I wait till after corrections?
Sure, you may.
Thank you.
You bet. You can wait. You're the sheriff.
Yes, and moving on, the Office of the Sheriff also has the corrections, adult corrections facility, the operation of that, and the operation of the adult corrections facility and the alternative programs that support successful reintegration into the community are run by the Office of the Sheriff. Next year is a small increase for corrections. There are funds that increase contracts and funding for mental health treatment program for the Sheriff's Office. These are mainly out of the treatment sales tax program. The general fund budget for corrections is $18.2 million in 2019, $18.5 million in 2020. The total budget is $21.9 million in 2019 and $22.6 million in 2020. And again, the difference is from treatment sales tax dollars.
All right. See, is there anybody from the public wish to address the Sheriff's Office in terms of the corrections portion of the budget? Seeing no one. Sir, do you care to take the podium?
Would it be okay if I could put you the pamphlet first?
Sure.
You can read at your pleasure.
We got our pleasure, yeah.
Thank you, sir.
I was looking forward to this.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, Sheriff. First off, I want to say thank you for this opportunity to speak. What I just handed you is what we do monthly. It's our advanced management meeting, which the public and you all are invited to, but I haven't seen all your bright and shiny faces there, and I know you have busy schedules. This was also prepared by our analyst that is still unfunded, and that we're required to absorb those costs. So if I could just make a few statements on the operations side first. In 2000, we had 70 deputy positions. To date, I have 67, 4 of which of those 67 are funded, 2 by the city of Rainier, 1 with the public, with the roads department for 2 traffic units that go out there 4 hours a day and assist public roads. That's $120-some thousand funded position. And then I was just funded by North Thurston School District, which you all approved for that FTE position for 3 years. If it wasn't for that, I would be down to 63 deputy positions. Although I look forward to my 2 additional deputy positions, I am not funded for their equipment, which is about it's $10,880 to equip each deputy. I'm not funded along with that, nor am I funded for a training budget. And the reason why I bring up the training budget is, as the 6th largest sheriff's office in the state of Washington, I find it very embarrassing to tell people that I do not have a budget for training. I use my discretionary spending for that. But my discretionary spending is supposed to be also used for supplies that we use on a daily basis. And so it's really hard to find out why I can't be funded, A, by a training budget, which I'm mandated by law to train each and every one of my deputies 24 hours of training a year, not including what we're going to be dealing with Initiative 940, when we're going to come out with the 40-hour mandatory training for each deputy. So I'm not funded for any of that. The hardest part for me is that being staffed, short-staffed, the work that the men and women do for this office is extraordinary. And when you get to read those pamphlets, you'll see that I'm able to keep track of how long it takes a secondary unit to respond to a priority 1 call, which is over 17 minutes. For an in-progress call, it takes the second deputy 17 minutes to get there. And as you see on the chart, you'll also see that our priority 1 calls were just under 11 minutes, but we've been averaging over 11 minutes throughout the entire year for an in-progress priority call. And to be honest with you, it's sad to hear those numbers, especially when we're dealing with 2018 going into 2019. And the reason why I provide this pamphlet to you is to show you how diligent I am trying to be with not only the resources that you provide me through a budget, but what the work of the men and women do for this agency. It doesn't include all the volunteer hours that are provided through the men and women who work for the sheriff's office just because they choose to want to be of service. Being of service means that I have one person who works a 40-hour work schedule just to do backgrounds because I'm not funded to have a background investigator. I have a volunteer. I also have a part-time person that I'm allotted, but that part-time person volunteers the rest of his time because he's retired, that he can volunteer his other 6 months to us to be able to assist us in background investigations as well. If it wasn't for those 2 individuals, I don't know where I'd be at in my background process, yet alone for corrections. On the corrections staffing, we did a staffing study earlier this year. And thank you for doing that, because I know it's taken over a year to finish and complete. But in that staffing study, it said 12, and I'm staffed with 7. I'm 5 short. That 5 short means that I'm going to have an overtime post still with the corrections. Having that overtime post, just right now, I'm 125% over my overtime budget. And with the operations side, I'm 14% over my overtime budget. And it's going into however we can find monies to be able to make that difference up. Bless you. And so where I'm at is that I'm asking that that this commission take a serious, bless you, take a serious look at how we can properly staff the sheriff's office. Being the lowest staffed in the state of Washington for just over 20 years is unacceptable. And you hear me every year coming up and saying why we need more staffing. And I will reflect to your strategic plan that you all sent out to have and produce. And in your staffing study, it also talks about public safety. The unfortunate part is that I'm number 12 in your step of 18 individual strategic plans. In that strategic plans, it talks about the work that we're already doing to reduce the population of our corrections facility. It does not address what I'm going to do with the staffing. And as you know, as has been asked of me many times by the board, is that what am I doing to reduce recidivism? What am I doing to make our population less? And you have seen it before as Ms. Campbell read through in our budget presentations of all the work that the men and women are doing, not only in Superior Court, District Court, corrections, prosecutor, both felony and misdemeanor, and also with Patrick O'Connor, and with Miss Marianne Clear in our pretrial services group. We have been working diligently to work with the men and women who are going to our facility and what can we do better. My huge concern is working with Disability Rights of Washington and seeing what is on their agenda of how we need to be better at how we are dealing with the mental health part of the incarcerated people. And what am I doing better for them? And to be honest with you, I don't know more that I can do without the staffing that I'm asking for. So I know that you really don't have any many reconsiderations on your budget, and it's already probably been formed and decided upon, but it really is of urgency that we really reflect on what are we doing for our criminal justice system, and why do I have the lowest staffing in the state of Washington, and why is my staffing in corrections the lowest, where it is affecting the men and women who work in 12-hour shifts now are working 16-plus hour shifts just to make it work. So thank you for your time, and I wish you all happy holidays, but I will answer any questions that you have.
Oh, yeah, we got questions.
Awesome.
Sheriff, by any chance, could you let the public know your ratio per thousand population served compared to the city of Olympia police officers?
So right
Do you have that off
now,
the top of your head?
right now with the city of Olympia, it was just we just did a recent study on it. It's 1.3 officers per thousand in the city of Olympia. Right now, we're at 0.47 deputies per thousand. In Lacey's 1.2, and the city of Tumwater is about 0.8, I believe, per thousand. They've recently incorporated some UGA, so that's why their staffing is lower now.
Are the other jurisdictions roughly reflecting what's going on throughout the state in municipal areas?
Actually, yes, as far as hiring. They're funded for it, but they're not able to do the recruiting. Recruiting now has been very difficult for all law enforcement, mostly because of the job markets now and how well the economy is going. We're seeing that right now it's probably it is one of the hardest times to recruit men and women for law enforcement. And just to reflect back, even 10, 15 years ago, we were seeing a 90% failure rate, and we still are to this day for law enforcement and for corrections.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sheriff, thank you for this. It'll be good information when I take the time to read it later on. And you know I bleed for law enforcement across the country, let alone locally here. And you have a very impassioned plea, and it's not falling on deaf ears, at least with me. And I realize, I don't know if Lacey and Tumwater have it, but I know Olympia has the public safety sales tax, 1/10 of 1%. Is that something you would support then, to help the sheriff's office get up to staffing?
When we talk about the law and justice tax, the commitment that I would have to have is that if I ask for anything to the public, it has to be the truth. And if I ask and go out and ask citizens for a public safety tax, how do I guarantee that money goes directly to public safety to serve the sheriff's office? And for that, I would not be able to do anything unless I had assurances and guarantees, because the most important part of being the sheriff or being John Snobbs is integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And asking for something out of our citizens is very important to me. And I don't want to mislead anybody. And I think sometimes a public safety tax can be misleading on to how it's used in the various offices or departments that it could be used for. And John Snodza could be going out and asking for it, and none of it even go to the sheriff's office, but to all other entities of the law and justice. And I just want to make sure that it goes to the sheriff's office.
I understand. So you're saying 100% of it?
Well,
for the sheriff's office?
what would have to be is that if I ask for it, and whatever percentage is going to ensure that it's going to serve the citizens. So whatever those numbers look like, and whatever we would be asking for from the taxpayer.
It makes sense. With increased deputies comes increased safety, increased coverage, reduction perhaps in overtime and such, but that would be increased arrests. So the prosecutor would need some money, the public defense would need money, court would be looking for some funding too. I was just wondering.
Absolutely, but then again, I would like to see all those partners out there too.
Thank you, sir.
Comment from me to you is, can you talk a little bit more about the recruiting, how difficult it is, and once you get a person on board, having to pass the requirements and still may or may not come on there, and do it in terms of the numbers, say in the corrections where you asked for 12, you got 7, but that's a 5 difference, but still not be able to meet the other vacancies that are still out there.
So if I understand your question correctly, when I ask for corrections deputies, first off, you're asking men and women to work in a facility that, for better or for lack of better words, in an environment that can be very depressing. You're meeting men and women who have made mistakes in their lives, and you're there to hopefully better their lives, make a better impact. It's really hard to find people that are willing to step up to make those impacts on those people's lives every day in a facility where people aren't really excited to really be there in the first place, nor do they want to be there, nor do they desire to be there, but they're there for whatever reasons, and they're there waiting for a trial date or they're being sentenced. And when you're asking men and women to be there for them, to make them follow rules, not all of those people in my facility are there because they follow rules. And so it's up to us to ensure that they do follow rules. And so we're looking for people who are able to ensure that people follow the rules and that are good mentors and are people that have the compassion to want to see people better themselves than maybe what they even see in their own selves. On the law enforcement end, the hardest part about that is that when did law enforcement become such a negative thing? Meaning we are the community. We live here. We go to school with the colleges. Our kids go to the same schools. We shop in the same places. We visit the same churches. Yet, for whatever reason, law enforcement has gotten a horrible definition of what you are. And it's up to me to show people what we really are about. And the men and women who work in law enforcement, what we really are, is we're caring people, and we are of this community. But you're also dealing with, the economy's doing well, and how do you get people who are willing to sacrifice their lives for others for the betterment of this community? And like I explained to most people, it's less than 1% of our community that are willing to stand up to want to provide public safety for the citizens that live here, that live in this community, that visit this community, where we work, live, and play in Thurston County. How do we make it better and where people feel safe every day? That's our job. And it also says that in your strategic plan. So, and where do our kids feel safe in school? It's our job to make sure they do. So the hardest part is that people wanting to make that sacrifice.
Sure, but even, is it fair to say even with the greatest or grandest recruiting effort, it's still hard to even meet some of the minimums that you were talking about, let alone some of the maximums you're trying to get to as far as the workforce that this board and future boards need to pay attention to in terms of funding?
Well, I believe the board has been paying attention to it. It's just, with the sheriff's office and the recruiting efforts, I do expect people to have made mistakes in their life, because I would hate to hire anybody who's perfect. But what I'm saying about mistakes that people make is that how are we holding ourselves accountable? And one of the hardest things we're seeing is whether people are willing to tell the truth about themselves. And that's usually what gets everybody, is the background when they don't like to admit that they made those mistakes and aren't willing to mention those. And again, I'm not looking for a perfect person, but I am looking for a person that is willing to serve and who acknowledges their mistakes. And what we're finding out on the washout rate is people who aren't willing to acknowledge that. Law enforcement has been easier on the recruiting side than corrections. However, I do want to say that just for the Thurston County Sheriff's Office, that you can be very proud of the men and women who have wanted to work for Thurston County Sheriff's Office, because they're all awesome people that really do care about this community. And it's nice to have those kind of people wanting to work for you.
Oh, yeah.
Or this community. You always hope they like the boss too.
Yeah. We agree 100%.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Anything else?
No. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you for your words, sir. Okay, so that covers the public defense, the sheriff. Is there any final comments?
No, that is all of the law and justice offices and departments. Again, I appreciate all of the elected officials, department directors, administrators who showed up to be available should the public have had questions. This evening is an open forum, and the public will be able to ask questions about any office or department. We've not asked elected officials or department directors to be at the evening sessions. We'll take questions and get back to the public at that time. But just again, thank you, and we're done for this afternoon.
He has a comment, and then do you have a comment?
No, I don't.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess I'd just like to comment to the general public that might be viewing this that there were months and months of hard work that went into this budget by staff, and you're just seeing the final results of that budget that's been worked out ahead of time. So I'd hate to have anybody think that this budget just came together this afternoon. So thank you all for the hard work that went into this budget.
Mayor, anything? final things you got?
No.
Okay, so I just want to also echo those words for the staff that's done the budget and those from the Law and Justice, the Superior Court, Juvenile Court, Clerk, Coroner, District Court, Pretrial Services, the Prosecuting Attorney, the Sheriff, and Public Defense coming today. It is very important for the public to understand or have the opportunity to speak to the budget. At this juncture, I'm going to recess the public hearing as you know it and resume at 4 p.m. with the general government, and that will consist of the Assessor's Office, the Auditor's Office, the Commissioner's Office, the Treasurer's Office, Human Resources Department, and Central Services Department. If there's no other questions or comments, I'm going to recess this public hearing.
Thank you.